Good morning. A song by the punk band The Rakes posits, "We are all the animals who have lost our hair, retained some of our teeth, and gained choice. We'll chase food, money, and sex until satisfied." While there is some truth in those lyrics, they don't tell the whole story. We as a species have survived because we are social animals who are driven to collaborate. Perhaps the defining characteristic of Homo sapiens is our need to tell stories to each other and to be inspired and united by those stories that in turn drive us into action to mold culture and our material world. But speech is not necessary in all species. Several days ago, I walked my dog down our street, and 3 deer were in a neighbor's yard, eyeing us. As we approached, the larger doe let out an audible snort, alerting her offspring that it was time to run. Once again, my dog's ego and role was affirmed as apex predator of the neighborhood, and all was right with the world. I look forward to hearing Carl's message this morning about our fellow animals in the natural world and what we can learn from them. For opening words, I have a reading from our hymnal of unknown origin. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. As Unitarian Universalists, we come together and worship each week to honor what is of worth, to celebrate the grace and abundance that surrounds us. In this hour, we pause the everyday rush and flow of our lives in reverence and thanksgiving to connect with what is sacred and to remember our commitments to each other and the world. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, whatever your name for the sacred, you are very welcome to bring your full self here. So my name is Kent Martin, and I am a member of this congregation. As part of our worship committee, I help lead worship from time to time when our pastor, the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, has a day off. And even though she has a day off today, she's running tech for us. So what commitment. Thank you. A big thank you to Monica, too, who's handling the camera. And hello to our good friends on Zoom. We're so glad you could join us. It's such a pleasure to have our guest speaker, Carl Safina, back in our pulpit again. Carl is an American ecologist and author of books and other writings on the human relationship with the natural world. He is the founding president of the Carl Safina Center and is the inaugural holder of the Carl Safina Endowed Chair for Nature and Humanity at Stony Brook University. You may have read his recent op-ed in the New York Times, which is the inspiration for his presentation this morning. A big thank you to Carl, who is not manning tech today, but is always helping us keep tech working. And of course, all the folks that prepare food and so forth, Carl and Pam, you guys are always doing so much to prep for Sunday mornings. And it's always a pleasure to have our music director, Steven Skolberg, with us. We love his music. He just returned from an amazing vacation in Scandinavia. So you'll have to get highlights from him over coffee afterwards. To enhance our worship experience, please hold your applause until the end of the service. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to silence your phones to make sure we don't have any interruptions during the service. We also take this time to acknowledge the native people who claimed this land as home before European colonization. We honor generations of their care and stewardship, and certainly appreciate all the other beings that share this land. Carolyn, if you're hearing that. And we honor our relationship with the Shinnecock neighbors today that we have in their continued struggles for sovereignty and justice. On Zoom, you can find today's order of service pasted in the chat by Reverend Kimberly. Feel free to give her feedback in chat if you have any concerns about volume and so forth. I know we have one announcement today from Sue. It's time for our monthly President's Day update, or update from our president of the board. And are there any other announcements besides Sue's? I understand that you guys had a great chat. What is it? Chat and chew? Yes. Yeah, chat and chew on Friday night. And that there was a big party at Sylvester Manor, too, that had to be right up against it. But anyhow, fun stuff. So, Sue, feel free to come up. It is. Is it down too low? What do you think, Carl? Reverend Kimberly, are folks saying they can't hear it? All right.
Good morning. I'm Sue, your president. I didn't know it was President's Day. I like that. Once a month, president. Okay. The mission of our board this year is really to help build community, deepen relationships. One way we're trying to do it is to offer a lot of different activities. So we've almost gone full cycle with our trail mixers. We have 6 leaders in 6 different places, and we hope to repeat that again. So please look up one of those. Meditation will continue on Wednesdays for the near future. We plan to keep that one going. I'm really excited about the Climate Circle next week here. 12 to 1:30. John Andrews and I are sort of doing this together. John will probably take over when I'm away in the winter. But I think I'm so excited about it because it offers some different ways to approach this that I hope you'll find really worthwhile. We have a couple fundraisers to put on your calendar. Only one we have a date for, and that's Emma's Revolution. Concert will be here November 2nd at 5 o'clock. Please come and support this. They are a real social action duo that provide wonderful messages and great listening music, too. Dining for Dollars, we'll start to get that going, and we have a team for that. If you can still join the team if you'd like to. And everyone, thanks for brainstorming last week. We really came away from that brainstorming session with lots of great ideas to celebrate our milestones. 40 years as a congregation, 20 years in this building, 10 years with Reverend Kimberly, and June we pay off our solar panels. So much to celebrate this year, and we walked away with lots of great ideas for that. And we have mundane stuff we're doing, like the Shine contract that is for 5 years, and I think we're there on that now. So if you have any questions or would like to participate in some way you don't really know how, please get in touch with me. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Do we have any visitors who would like to introduce themselves today? No pressure. If you feel like it, fine. If not, we'll learn to know your name after the service. And is anyone joining us online who would like to introduce themselves on Zoom? Perhaps it's just the regulars today. All right. So please take a moment now to greet your neighbor at the Meeting House and online.
No. A week ago. Been back for a week, yeah. It took a week to readjust. Finland is 7-hour difference. Yeah. A ton of, well, Stockholm, well, everywhere. Have you been? Good to see you again. Great to be there.
Welcome back. So for our chalice lighting today, I'm reading the words of Francis Coziar. It's entitled, Bringing Us Home to Love. And Sarah, could you light the chalice while I read the words? We light this chalice today as a people dedicated to personal growth. May it burn away the oppressions we have been taught and glow instead with the humility of learning. May it reignite our dreams for a better world and kindle our joy for simple living. May its warmth extend out into the forgotten alleyways of exclusion and bring us home to love, to welcoming, and to all the challenges, the questions, and the blessings of this beautiful path to becoming a beloved community. Please rise as you're willing or able to sing our first hymn. It's number 163 in the gray hymnal, For the Earth Forever Churning. I was pleased that Carl had suggested for our first message, for a reading, the poem that we often hear excerpts from or read in its totality in this meeting house by Mary Oliver, The Summer Day. So I'll share that with you now. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down into the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is your plan to do with your one wild and precious life? May your roots grow deep. May your branches spread far. May you find the world to be a wonderful place and leave it better for those who follow. We'll sing Spirit of Life seated now. That's number 123 in your gray hymnal. meditation. Feel free to get comfortable, perhaps put both feet on the floor, and prepare to listen to some poetry and then hold some silence immediately after. I'll be sharing a reading from Wendell Berry, and I'll tap the chime to bring us back in after a moment of silence following the poem. When despair for the world grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sounds in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests, in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of the wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Please hold the silence with me. This is the time in our service where we have the opportunity to share a joy, a sorrow, or a milestone with us. We received 2 collections here, the baskets in the back that are going to be passed. There's one basket that's being passed that is a collection that sustains this congregation in the meeting house. And then there's one that sits in the back that is for the Helping Hand Front.
And you all are a hard act to follow, because while I was sitting there, I heard that we're all interested in food, money, and sex. I would have liked to hear a lot more about that part. And we heard from Mary Oliver, towering talent and a wonderful orienting sort of body of work that she provided. And then, thanks to Ken, a little bit about Jane Goodall. Good to remember Jane Goodall. I wasn't planning to talk about Jane Goodall at all, but I will very briefly. Somebody from Associated Press was writing something about her and asked me for a comment. So I just pulled up my comment here. She was the first scientist, Jane Goodall was the first scientist to recognize individuality and premeditated strategy in animals other than humans. And one of the ways she reflected this observation was in her decision to name the chimpanzees she was studying. Up until that time, almost no one studied live, free-living animals. Mostly they killed them and then did things like pull their teeth out to see how old they were and get an idea of the population structure and that kind of thing. The idea of studying how animals actually live rather than killing them was very rare. There were only 3 people doing that, I believe, at the time. And she was by far the most prominent because of her connections and because National Geographic decided to feature her work. But when she named the chimpanzees instead of numbering them, her advisors back in England, who had, of course, never watched chimpanzees, told her everything she was doing was completely wrong, that animals don't have personalities, they're not even conscious, and these kinds of things. And Goodall stuck to her guns. She was right, and you know, as a woman in a man's game, no less, it took courage to do that because she had a lot at stake. She was trying to get a PhD, and she was very, very much in the public eye. And rather than bending to the preconceived notions and going along to get along, she had the courage of her convictions, which sometimes is all we can hope for ourselves, or the best we can hope for. She is credited with discovering that chimpanzees use tools. She was not the first, and not the first to write about that, but one person who wrote about that in the late 1800s was actually a missionary. His work was totally forgotten at the time, and so she saw that they used tools, and this was a gigantic, pretty much a threat to human beings, because we are the most insecure of all of the apes. And we had defined ourselves as the tool-using animal. So now what do we do? Because our favorite story is we're the most special, and everything is here revolving around us. But nonetheless, chimpanzees and a bunch of other animals do use tools and sometimes make tools. And these things are now so self-evident they can seem really trivial, but I think that we should realize that, you know, Jane Goodall really broke trail for a lot of us. My own work in conservation started out mostly about numbers, about population trends and protecting populations, but more and more in the last decade or more, I've circled back to my earliest interest, which is what do wild animals do, and why do they do that? When I was a little boy, Jane Goodall had at least one chicken that was sort of her spark animal when she was a little girl. I raised pigeons when I was a little boy, when I was 7, 8, 9. I had a flock of homing pigeons, and when you're that young, you have a lot of time to watch your animals. You don't have a lot you have to do. And you haven't forgotten how to pay attention to things. So it was very evident to me, we lived in Brooklyn, and it was very evident to me that the pigeons in the coop who decided for themselves who they were going to marry and sometimes had fights and jealousies, and parents would leave for the day and then come back to the coop and feed their babies and go to bed, that they were pretty much exactly like we were right across the yard in our own stack of boxes where people decided who they were going to marry, and they had squabbles and jealousies, and parents left for the day and then came back and fed their babies, and we went to bed. I much later was taught that that was all wrong, but I always knew that it wasn't wrong, and increasingly the profundity of that realization is a very centering thing for me in life. Now, I want to talk to you about what I was planning to talk to you about. Oh, so thank you, Jane Goodall. What I was planning to talk about was a little story that became an op-ed in the New York Times a little while ago, a few months ago. I think it came out in June. How many people read it? Okay, I'm glad to see that not that many people read it, so it won't seem too redundant or too familiar to many of you. But I want to tell you how this little story came about. So in March, when things in the federal government began to show the ugliness that they are showing, and we were all getting very upset and depressed, my major donor for all of my work, my not-for-profit work, who runs a foundation in California, contacted me and said, we're all really, really upset, and we're having a gathering of about 24 heads of environmental and justice organizations. And when she got to that half of the sentence, I thought, oh, great, I could use it to be with some people. And then she said, and we would like you to give us a pep talk at dinner. Well, I wasn't feeling very peppy. I was feeling depressed and anxious and angry and upset, all the human emotions that we share with chimpanzees. Thank you again, Jane. And I thought, how in the world am I supposed to stand up in front of 24 heads of organizations and give them a pep talk when I feel as down as everybody? And I reached into my bag of memories about the natural world and about animals that I have seen and watched, and that became the anchoring story for what I did come up with, which I hope will also strike all of us as a bit of a pep talk. So a long time ago, 34 years ago, I think, I was in Tanzania at a place that is famous for wildlife called Ngorongoro Crater. I would imagine that there is at least one person in this room who's been there. Anybody been to it? See? That's the kind of crowd we have out here. So this place is a collapsed volcano. It's a huge bowl, quite a few miles across. And in this crater, there was one group of lions. I don't like these words like prides and packs and things and herd. They're groups of animals. But anyway, I lapse back also, and I sometimes call them a pride. So there was this one pride of lions that was known to hunt while it was still light out. Most lions actually hunt in the dark, which if you think lions are scary, just imagine that. They mostly hunt in the dark, but this one group was known to hunt during daylight. And so we went and we found them, and what we hoped was that we were going to see them hunting. And when we found them, they were sleeping, which is what lions do for about 20 hours a day. And then we watched for a while. They began to wake up. When they woke up, there were about 10 of them, and some of them were battle-scarred old ones. They were all the ones that we saw there that day were female. Battle-scarred old hunters and young, spry, new hunters, about 10, and they woke up because they were going now to hunt, but they didn't just wake up and hunt. They woke up, they licked each other, they rubbed noses, they rubbed faces, they rubbed flanks, and they did quite a lot of that. And then, only then, did they set off. And I thought, in reflecting later, I'll tell you what happened next, but in reflecting later, I thought, why all the rubbing and licking? That doesn't catch a zebra. They spent time and energy licking each other. That doesn't catch a zebra. But only after they did that were the zebras in any kind of danger, because that's what they needed to do to get ready to hunt. Even though they all lived together, even though they were all related, they had to say, hello again, we reaffirm that we are one, we are a unit, we belong to each other. And now, after reaffirming that, we can go and do what we need to do. So what they did was very, very fascinating to me and remains something that I always think about and remember when I think about the capacities that non-human beings have for knowing who they are, where they are, and what they're doing. So they all set out as a group. They went up a slope on a low hill that had very tall grass. And one of them sat down, but only one. And then about 30 yards along, another sat down, until 9 of the 10 were sitting down, like a picket fence hiding in the tall grass, and one went down the hill to part of the open plain where there was a group of zebra who were grazing. And her job was to go around the zebras and scare them up the hill into the waiting ambush of her sisters and their kids. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they did it well, except it failed. The zebras spooked in the opposite direction, away from the one who was there to scare them, and the zebras stayed safe for now, but the lions didn't get discouraged. They fail regularly, and they know that failure is part of how you succeed. And they would do that again, and they would catch what they needed to catch, and that's why they're there, because failure is part of success. Trying is something that you do not knowing if you will succeed, and that's what keeps them going, and that's what keeps us going. So what they showed me really is that a sense of community is the prerequisite for any coordinated strategy, and that's as true of us as it is for them. And when I sort of started coming up in the world, I got a little, in terms of my love of nature and my desire to see, the wild things conserved, I got a little baptism in failure, because when I was an adolescent, my favorite birds were ospreys and peregrine falcons and bald eagles, and all of them were endangered at the time. And I had asked my father when I was a little boy and I first heard that word, I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "Well, it means that there might be none left in a short while." And I thought, well, that's really bad. Maybe someday I can help with that in some way. But when I was 12 or 13 or 14 years old, I was in no position to help much of anything. I felt as helpless as we often still feel about some things. But those birds were all completely dying off. The DDT and the other pesticides that everyone sprayed, including my father, in our lawn, and all the neighbors in that neighborhood, they were causing those birds' eggs to break, and the older birds, after a few years of that, they just were all dying off. So already peregrine falcons were gone from essentially all of the United States. Bald eagles were essentially gone from almost all of the United States, except Alaska, and there were a bunch in Canada, there were a few in Florida, and ospreys. This is hard to believe if you know ospreys, because they are a dime a dozen now, but there were like 1 or 2 pairs still nesting on Long Island and raising 0 young. And I came home from school one day from the bus, and I was walking home, and there was so-called landscaping company spraying poison up in some tree, and bugs were just falling out of the tree, and a couple of robins came to eat the bugs and went into convulsions right there in the street in front of me. So I got to see some of that firsthand. Now, in those days, nobody knew what in the world could possibly save these birds. But there were 6 people in Suffolk County who said that they would save those birds. They would not let those birds disappear forever. They sued the county to get them to stop spraying DDT all over all of the marshes, and they surprised themselves by winning, and then they started a federal lawsuit to do the same thing, and they won, and they then established an environmental group called the Environmental Defense Fund, which is still going very strong today. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, what I think of when I think of those lions is that as individuals, there's not a lot we can do to fix the gigantic and building problems that we are faced with. But collectively, there is something that we can do. And what we can do is different for each of us, but we can't really do it alone. We have to find the encouragement of coming together, the identity of being together and joining up. There are, on the East End, we are rich with groups who care and are trying to do something and are, in fact, remaining energized. I don't know, did anybody see Bill McKibben talk at Guildhall? That was the greatest talk I've ever seen in my entire life. And so many positive things that he talked about, and so many things that are moving in the right direction in many places in the world, just not where we happen to live at the moment. Very, very encouraging. And one of the things that he always says is when people ask him, what can I do? I'm just one person. He always says, stop being just one person. And that's what the lions know every day, and that's what we tend to forget. So that feeling of being connected is how we can reverse our fears, well, maybe not all of them all the time, but we can reverse enough of our fear and our acquiescence and stay energized enough to understand that although we don't know how things will play out, just like the lions when they went up on that hill in the tall grass, we don't know how things will play out, and we do know that success will involve failure, but we also know, like the lions, that success is possible, and that success will come if we keep trying. So it's important that we all reaffirm our sense of pride, our shared purpose, our dedication to the common good, our common good. And as the lions showed me, community comes first before strategy. There are many of us who are waiting in the tall grass of decency. And maybe we will get our chance to rush out and restore the great country that we have loved. So, thank you. So there's another thing about this that is important to remember, and that is balance. Some of us get really, overly overwrought about certain things, as I do frequently, and it is important to know that as much as one would like to be dedicated, to remain dedicated, we do need to balance our lives. Take in the joys of community that I've been talking about, the beauty of nature, the beauty of these days that we have sacrificed here to be here listening to me on a beautiful day like this. We we can never feel like we're doing everything we can or enough. I think many of us share that feeling. I know it's a feeling that shadows me a lot, always saying, what more can I do? Why are you wasting your time right now in the garden when you should be working, etc.? But it's not a waste of time. It's in a sense, it's part of the way that we rub noses with ourselves to give us what we need, the energy we need, the connection we need to the beauty of the world. The world is not just a place full of issues and problems. The world is mostly a place full of beauty and cooperation, and we tend to forget that a lot. The world is truly a miracle, and life is truly a miracle. And the reason I frequently say that is that miracle has a definition. A miracle is something that breaks the laws of physics. If you think of how miracles are used in literature or in movies, it's when something impossible happens, something that cannot happen happens. And, well, the second law of thermodynamics tells us that everything tends toward disorder. And a good example of that is if you have a dropper with black ink and you drop a drop of black ink in a bowl of water, it will spread out until all the water is just gray, but it will never, ever go back. Those ink molecules will never, ever go back into one drop of black in a bowl of clear water. And that's because of the second law of thermodynamics. But think about life. A good example is to think about an egg, because we have all cracked plenty of eggs. Well, what does an egg do? It makes itself into a bird. And that goes against the laws of physics. It is truly a miracle. All of life on this planet, the only life we can detect in the universe, and certainly the only life in the solar system, is just not supposed to happen. But we are all part of this miracle. And that's something I think we need to remember every day. So thank you very much. That's what I have to say.
Thank you for those inspiring words. And it's great that we can rub noses, lick each other, yes, and here, because I know many of you go out and do great work in the community, and we hope that we can support you in that way. So please join us after the postlude for fellowship and light refreshments. But before that, we will stand and sing together For the Beauty of the Earth from the Gray Hymnal, number 21. That's number 21 in the Gray Hymnal.
For the love which from
grandchild, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and love, source of all to thee we raise, this our hymn of grateful praise. Please be seated. For our benediction, I'm sharing the words of the Navajo prayer that you may be familiar with. Beauty is before me, beauty behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I am surrounded by it. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it. And in old age, I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty it is begun, and in beauty it is ended. Please join me in reading the words in your order of service for extinguishing the chalice. Extinguish this flame, but not the light of wisdom. Please remain seated to enjoy the postlude.
Just a couple of words. I'm about to play some excerpts from Finlandia by Jean Sibelius. I knew this was a nationalistic piece, but I didn't know. I was reading about it yesterday. It's actually a protest against Tsarist Russia and about the protesting freedom of the press. Also, want to mention my wife and I just got back from Sweden and Finland. I just got back from Finland about 1 week ago. So this is Finlandia.